Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, please like, share, and subscribe. Please support us on Patreon. The link is in the description. This week's video, we're going to talk about the High Elves. The High Elves, these are your snooty, very noble, with their upturned nose kind of elves, and I also really enjoy playing these kinds of noble characters that are kind of just monsters that you want to get rid of. They have this great tradition as being kind of the closest to what the elves are, as far as their arcane mastery, their nobility, their pride within themselves, their belief that they are just the better version of everything. And they really share a great connection to Corellian and how they see things. They're chaotic, usually, but not in an evil way. They just kind of do whatever they want. They feel like they can just embrace whatever whims come their way. And a lot of them traditionally kind of feel that way. These elves have that great nobility, but they don't have to be played that way. I like the idea for this particular kind of elf for a phantom rogue. And this will probably be my next campaign character, if things kind of stay along the same lines mentally for me, unless I have a breakdown. The reason why I say this is I like the idea of just being noble, but trapped within this dark energy that you can feel, this connection to just horrid shadow worlds where pain and death occur, or being closely in tune with death as a whole, and having that just infuse your very being. And I think that's very cool to have this kind of pristine, almost white knight kind of appearance during the day, and then when it gets dark and it gets devastating, it's time for you to delve into the darker parts and embrace that kind of a feel. And the reason why I really kind of like this for particularly a rogue is for some of the other abilities that we're going to get into shortly. But as a +2 dex and a +1 intelligence, you do have a great ability to be a bunch of different casters like wizards and arcane tricksters or even eldritch knights. So it does play in your benefit to have some magic at your whims and casts. So really kind of inherit and bring that kind of to what you are. And even though you're not necessarily a caster, you do have an affinity for it. The elves in the player's handbook, which of course the high elves come from, have an inherent group of abilities that are part of who they are. All the subclasses get it with a few deviations between, and I say subclasses, but I mean between high elves, wood rangers, which I often call woad for some reason, and drow. So the base elves all get proficiency in perception. They have fey ancestry, which means they can't. They have advantage against being charmed, and magic can't put them to sleep. And then they have the trance ability. I covered this previously in our drow video, but understand what the trance means to your character. Please try and incorporate that, as trance is not just a pseudo sleep. It's an opportunity for you to remember great moments in your life, sad moments in your life, important things that might transgress into animosity towards what you're going through, or be reflected of it, or really kind of bridge the importance of your backstory to the current events, and really use that to kind of make things work for yourself. Especially if you're taking abilities that can be switched on a rest, like if you're a cleric or if you're a druid, where you can change your spells based around whenever you finish a short rest. Kind of things like that you can switch back and forth. Having that as part of your trance is a wonderful thing that really helps make something that's just kind of a useless ability seem and carry actual weight into what your character does and what your character looks like and how your character acts. They also gain dark vision out to 60 feet, which every elf does have. Where the high elf differs from the other elves is one major aspect. They do have a cantrip that they can pick from the wizard spell list, and intelligence is your spellcasting ability for it. This can be any wizard cantrip you like, so depending on what kind of a character you are, would depict that. Personally, as I mentioned before, you do have this wonderful affinity to magic, so I would wield that in any form that I could. I mentioned a high elf phantom rogue that I'm looking to play. in that circumstance, I would take Green Flame Blade. The reason why I would take Green Flame Blade is simple. The idea of doing Booming Blade and then using your disengage action to walk away does in fact encourage the enemy to walk towards you and take that secondary damage. But if you're going to go up and melee something, usually there's going to be another one of your party members right there in melee in order to give you sneak attacks. So the chances of them leaving is very few and far between. But I like the idea of, because you're a high elf, you can pull this flame from your magical essence and use that to attack with. And yeah, it jumps to another target and adds a little bit more to your damage. But I really like that. I really like that you're not bound to one particular kind of idea. You can pick any cantrip you want. Maybe you want a long range attack. Maybe you want something that's based on a saving throw. Maybe you want Toll of the Dead to fit the theme. It gives you this opportunity to not only do something offensive, but to really customize your character. Maybe you take Minor Illusion. Maybe you take Firebolt. Maybe you take something else or Dancing Lights or something and use that for trickery purposes or for leading the enemy or just really for being majestic with magic. Maybe you're really noble and you really adhere to your appearance, so you need to prestidigitate yourself clean from time to time just to make sure you are at the premium level of presentation whenever you go somewhere. These things can matter. These things make a difference. It helps to add on to the certain nuances of your character class. So really trying to pick something that fits that theme to really bring it all together, which I think is kind of exciting. And I think it works well because obviously the Wizard spell list has the biggest range of things, and an extra cantrip doesn't hurt, but it can support a lot of other things you're doing. Now, as a high elf, you do gain other abilities. You gain extra elf weapon training, which will give you the long sword, short bow, or long bow, and an extra language. You can choose to speak any other language besides Common and Elvish. These are good, but again, as I mentioned previously, the elf weapon training is really designed to kind of how you want to build your character, and what kind of things would look like a high elf. Where a drow would use a rapier, apparently a elf would use a short sword or a long sword. Probably more so a short sword because they are kind of still dexterity based. These concepts really built around what your character looks like and how they should be. Personally, in my build for my Phantom High Elf Rogue, I would take the short sword and not the rapier, simply because I like the idea of not needing to brandish such a big weapon to get things done. Yeah, you're taking a smaller die size, but like understand who your character is sometimes is more important than that 1 or 2 extra damage. You can get a lot of heat from metagamers for not using items that they would obviously choose, but you're so focused on certain aspects of what weapons you should use and what you should gain that you tend to forget the nuances and how much easier it is to hide a short sword than it is a rapier or a long sword. And you're also gaining other things. Like in my particular idea, taking the Green Flame Blade is going to constitute whatever you would do with a rapier. And yeah, you would do a little bit more damage if you use them both, but who you are should be representative as the items and weapons you use. Whenever I play with DMs, I try to get them to, if they're going to give me a magic item, to try and keep it at least the same type as magic item as I'm using. If that means foregoing me being able to get an item for longer, I'm cool with that. I just kind of want to keep everything within like one theme, and I think your weapon is representative of that. I think if you walk in there wielding 2 axes and the next week you're wielding 2 swords, like you feel different. You feel like you're not the same exact kind of a character because your weapons are a little different, because it's a different theory and a different impression that wielding those weapons get. Like if you pull out a bloodletting sword or some crude evil looking weapon with spikes and just designed to cause as much pain as possible, as opposed to a clean straight edge normal sword, like yeah, they're gonna imprint a certain emotion to that character when they see that weapon. When you see an orc with a giant axe and they slam it, like you're gonna know like that's an orc. Like an orc isn't gonna use a sword. Like an orc is gonna use an axe because an axe is more more reckless, it's more powerful. It's just designed to just cleave. Where a sword is more finessey and kind of fancy, where you don't want that. And I think that's indicative of what you're doing. I think playing your characters built around that way feels a little bit more cohesive, and I like the idea of not just running around trying to be an exact item duplicate of every other rogue that I see. Our final thoughts on the High Elf. I happen to really like this. I enjoy being a High Elf. I think I just have a natural affinity to be noble, jerk-like characters who look down on everyone. I happen to play that very well. But there's a lot of fun that I have in that, and I like the idea of being able to be this nobility with a dark secret. I like that idea of being able to be, yes, I am a High Elf, and I should be acclaimed as like an evocation wizard or maybe a transmutation wizard or something very, very promising and looked well upon by my people. But in truth, I am a necromancer or I'm a phantom rogue or I'm a gloom stalker. Like something that's just dark inherent as like your hidden part of who your life is, and you have that duality of your character. I love that concept. I like to add a lot of duality to my characters normally, where I'm one way in one place and a different way in another. It tends to come up pretty regularly, but I think everyone kind of shares that in some sort of aspect. I love the idea of carrying that nobility of who you are and why you consider yourself higher than all other elves and all other beings, because you just believe you're so close to the true pure form of elves. And I like the ability to be just so aloof. They give you this great option of elves to be kind of that way, and you're not tied and bound to it, but you can be just more whimsical with what you do. And if you take the longevity of your lifespan as an elf into consideration to how everything else looks, like sometimes lives are just expendable if they're too short. Sometimes they're not, or sometimes you care more about those that have shorter lifespans that you call friends, because you know, and what's going to be like a blink of an eye for you is going to be the extended and completion of their life. So you can build great relationships by taking those things into aspect. Being more the nobility of an elf and really loving city life and schools and literature and knowledge and things like that. It really breeds this great character to be involved with the courts, with the systems, the politics. So it's great for really almost any real heavy RP campaign, because there's going to be a lot of intellect that's going to be involved, a lot of being able to deal with that kind of a feel, and it can really build yourself in a situation like that. You're capable in every aspect. You're an elf. You're awesome. You can do a lot with the elves, period. And it's like the human in a lot of ways, because you can just go in any direction you want. So really take the chance to really build something that's like a little different from the norm, or maybe something close to the norm, but whatever feels great and pulls you together to doing something. Like one of the best representations of an elf in like Lord of the Rings will be Elrond, because he's this great leader. He's capable in combat. He knows the right thing to do, and he's just very like just distant. Like that's what you're gonna do. Cool, we're out. And takes a great big responsibility for himself, holding himself to a very high nature and high esteem, and really always weighing that weight of just knowing better and being disappointed by those who aren't, which is something I really enjoy. But that being said, we're going to bring this video to a close. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please comment. We'd love to hear your stories about High Elves, whether you love them, whether you hate them, or how you played them. And if you're able to, please support us on Patreon. The link is in the description. And most of all, thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.